The Taliban have held their first news conference since they took power in Afghanistan. They put out a message calling for women and former officials to join their government. The group's co-founder, Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar, has returned to Afghanistan for the first time in nearly 20 years. Baradar, who was captured and arrested in Pakistan, was released 3 years ago at the request of the former U.S. President, Donald Trump, so that he could take part in peace talks. But as he touched down in Kandahar, many remained skeptical about the Taliban's PR push inside and outside the country.
Desperate people trying to flee the country. But on the streets of Afghanistan's capital, armed Taliban fighters are showing a sense of calm, backed up by their weapons. Like these militants outside the Afghan Interior Ministry. Despite the guns, their message is to convince the Afghan people that there is nothing to be afraid of. We want the people to come to their workplaces or offices. There's no problem on the part of the Islamic Emirate, and the people of the nation should not fear the Mujahideen of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, because the nation is from the Mujahideen and the Mujahideen are from the nation. Undermining the received wisdom of the Taliban's hostility towards women, this Taliban leader engaged with a female presenter in a TV interview, an unprecedented move for the Islamist group, and perhaps part of a wider move to tap into the desire for peace and allay the very real fears that women are not safe. It was a line that was reiterated in a Taliban press conference later.
Women will be afforded all their rights, whether it is in work or other activities, because women are a key part of society. And we are guaranteeing all their rights within the limits of Islam.
An attempt to show a moderate side, perhaps, but many are skeptical of a group which presided over brutal punishments and severe restrictions for women. Superficially, though, the Taliban presence appeared to be not so unsettling for the residents of Kabul. Some went about their daily tasks either out of curiosity to see how things are under the new Taliban, or out of necessity. Most of those out on the streets were male. This woman, though, expressed a desire for peace.
I want to give this message to the youth that many young people were martyred. My son is one of them. I don't want any more bloodshed. One of my sons was in the police. He was killed 2 years ago. The other is still alive.
Conflict has been a part of their lives for so long that many Afghans are desperate for peace, but extremely wary of the promises being made by the Taliban.
For the latest, we can speak now to journalist Franz Mardi. He is standing by in Kabul. Franz, let's start with Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar. Tell us more about who he is and what his return means for this new Taliban era.
He was one of the Taliban founders, Taliban leaders, spent years in a jail in Pakistan, was released to move forward the peace process that led to the US-Taliban agreement, and then afterwards, negotiations between the Taliban and the government. He's one of 3 deputies of the Taliban main leader, responsible for political affairs. So his return might signal that the Taliban move forward with announcing or trying to announce a new government, a new order in more detail. It should be noted that the inner workings of the Taliban are obscure. I mean, there are assessments, analyses on it, but at least I myself have never met someone who can convincingly say how the Taliban exactly operate. So how much clout he has, how much he can decide is really open up for speculation outside the Taliban movement.
Well, what about the messaging we saw from the Taliban yesterday? They're saying they have changed. They won't take revenge on enemies. They will respect women's rights within the framework of Islamic law. What do people there in Kabul make of these statements?
First of all, it should be noted these are not new statements. The Taliban have since months, if not since years, again and again reiterated that they respect women's rights, that they don't kill people that have worked for the government, that their arms are open. Of course, they remain vague and always caveat this under Islamic principle and so on. And now it remains to be seen how harsh they implement this. In areas where they have already exerted control, it varied how restrictive they were or how much they enforced certain rules. And here in Kabul, the reaction really are the whole bandwidth. Some people are panicking, think the Taliban will eventually kill people out of revenge, and they try to flee by whatever means possible. Others are happy that the fighting is for now over and express to me explicitly that they're happy that the Taliban are here and that everything is quiet and that everything seems to be more or less under control and there is no fighting. And then you have everything in between these extreme positions.
Well, give us an idea, Franz, of how things look on the ground. It is day 3 under Taliban rule. There in Kabul, is there some type of normalcy now setting in?
Today, I haven't been out on the street yet. Yesterday, when it was some type of normalcy. There was less traffic, less people on the road, many shops still closed, others opened, and it seemed quite normal. The atmosphere was a little bit quieter. Everyone seemed to kind of not talk too much or not say too much because being not sure what happened. There were some Taliban checkpoints, but at least when I passed them, the Taliban were just standing there and not doing anything, not checking people. In other parts near the airport, this has apparently been different. In other parts, even main traffic circles, there was literally no Taliban around and just a little bit civilian traffic. So that there has been little of exerting physical control, except that Taliban can be seen in certain parts of the street. This will probably change once the Taliban have a stronger grip on things.
And Franz, last question. We're focusing very much on Kabul, but can you tell us how things are in the rest of the country?
I have today in the morning called several people in several cities. The general assessment is generally people told me everything is quiet. A little bit what I said here, the situation in Kabul, that Taliban are on the street, but they don't interact much with civilians. They don't harass them. There have been a few reports to the contrary. They are often hard to verify, but all in all, it seems to be also in provincial capitals rather calm. That said, a radio journalist from Kunar told me yesterday that the Taliban came to a station and they requested or demanded that there will be no music played. So this shows that the Taliban might soon begin to again implement harsher restrictions if they haven't already done so.
Journalist Franz Mardi speaking to us from Kabul. Thank you very much for that update. Well, a German flight carrying evacuees from Afghanistan has landed in Frankfurt. It's one of 3 special flights carrying people to Germany. As many countries rush to evacuate their citizens and staff from Kabul, the government in Berlin has been criticized for the slow pace of its evacuation campaign. But the Foreign Ministry says it is stepping up efforts to get more people out of Afghanistan.
A plane full of people escaping Taliban rule. Images shared by the German military of its 3rd rescue flight out of Kabul. By contrast, the first 3 German planes that flew to Afghanistan only brought a few people out. One flight left Kabul on Monday night with only 7 passengers on board. The security situation meant more could not be taken. Germany's strategy is to use the airport in Tashkent, the capital of neighbouring Uzbekistan, as a base for evacuations. They will then be flown on civilian airliners back to Germany. The first transport plane landed in Tashkent on Tuesday, bringing around 125 German embassy and support staff, but also citizens of other nations. The German government says the operation will assist anyone who can make it to Kabul airport. But there is fierce criticism of its handling of Afghans who work for the German army. This German officer runs an organization that sets up safe houses for local support staff in Kabul. He says that official rescue efforts are too little, too late. We stopped running safe houses for local people, and we told them to leave them now that they've become death traps. The Taliban are going door to door looking for local forces. And all I hear are the constant lies and half-truths to cover up what happened. Those of us who worked with local Afghans have no understanding for this. I listen to the cries for help, 400 to 500 of them every day, and it leaves its mark on us. Thousands demonstrated in Berlin and other cities to demand an unbureaucratic evacuation process and a welcome for people who want to come to Germany. They too are angry that the German government had not prepared better for the return of the Taliban. For those who want to leave Afghanistan, help is on its way. What is not clear is how many of them will be able to go.
For women and girls in Afghanistan, the return of the Taliban has meant fear and uncertainty. Since the extremists were ousted 2 decades ago, women have taken on a more prominent role in society. In politics, women were guaranteed more than a quarter of parliamentary seats. Several have held ministerial positions, like Surya Dalil here, who served as Minister of Public Health and was later named Afghanistan's permanent representative to the UN. In the security forces as well, women made an impact by joining the police and the army. Some of them rose through the ranks, like Brigadier General Kaltul Mohammad Zai, who we see here. Now, the percentage of girls and women receiving an education also increased significantly. The Taliban had long prohibited schooling for girls past the age of 10. Now, around a fifth of all university students are women. Under the Taliban regime, access to basic health care was also often restricted for women. A lot changed over the past 20 years, and now many fear Afghanistan's women might be once again stripped of their hard-earned rights. Now, for more on this, we have with us here in our studio our reporter, Brigitte Schilke. She has spent many years reporting in Afghanistan, covering women's rights and issues, and she's here to talk a little bit more about this topic with us. Brigitte, thanks for joining us. It does seem like the Taliban's trying to portray this image of a changed face, that they will provide more rights to women and girls and respect their role in society within the framework of Islamic law. What do you think women will be able to expect now?
I think, to be honest, nobody can tell right now. We sense a huge insecurity by the female. A lot went into hiding. They are scared because often the Taliban have said one thing and done the opposite. So the question is, like, women's rights under Sharia law, what does that really mean? So which rights do they address? Like, is it educational rights? Is it rights for representation, political rights? So all the women we spoke to, they don't know if they can go to university further. They don't know if women are allowed to work anymore. And in this insecurity, Kabul is changing already. It's small changes, but over the last 2 days, we have seen much less women on the streets. Female presenters in television have been replaced by their male colleagues. And this is just a small thing, but a big sign. The price for burqas has doubled on the market in Kabul over the last 2 days.
You mentioned universities. There are many girls in Afghanistan who have not yet finished their education. Do they have to fear for their future?
I mean, they definitely fear for their future now. And we saw this in other provinces, like Herat, when Taliban took control there. Girls or young students female students weren't allowed anymore on campus. So many teachers and also students alike fear that they won't be able to finish their education. Maybe not now, but once the international community doesn't look anymore so closely, they really fear that something, their rights to study or to have an education will be diminished. And this would be a huge setback, because over the last years, we have seen a new generation of females who were self-confident, starting businesses, well-educated, and they did a huge contribution to society, and they were also role models to those who are in universities now and really want to finish their education.
Well, we've seen Germany now saying that it's suspending its development operations right now because of the situation on the ground. Won't that just leave women and girls even more vulnerable going forward?
Yes, absolutely. Women, girls, but also the poor, because just close to a half of the population is living under the national poverty line. And a lot of international aid has gone into food aid. But yes, also in women's projects, like empowerment, like small loan programs, like I don't know, training for judges on women's rights. So I could go on for years. And definitely, if you cut back the funding for these sort of projects, it will have a huge impact on the women's role, especially in the rural areas. And that's why a lot of organizations have pledged to the international community and to Germany to not stop the funding to just, because you have to doubt that it has an effect on the Taliban, but it will definitely have an effect on girls and women.
And Brigitte, you have a lot of contacts on the ground in Afghanistan. What are they telling you right now? Everybody has this sense of insecurity. And in the first day after the Taliban took over, there was sheer panic. The people were really... They felt left alone, and I got a lot of messages. Now the situation is calming down a little bit. People have gone, as I said, into hiding. And the problem is that even in Kabul, they can trust the rules, because they told me that in each quarter or part of Kabul, other regional commanders of the Taliban have their own rules. So huge insecurity, and some told me if they can leave, they will do immediately. DW's Brigitte Schulke with us. Thank you so much for sharing your reporting.